Some breaking news just into us. The Michigan Supreme Court has ruled that Donald Trump will remain on the Republican primary ballot. Obviously, a significant decision here. People have been waiting to see, given the news last week that the Colorado Supreme Court, in a 4-3 vote, voted that he should not appear on the Republican primary ballot. So he will be on that Michigan ballot. Jonathan Lemire, the Supreme Court upholding an appeals court decision that previously had found the former president could appear on the ballot. This, of course, all raised because of his role in attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election. We also got these tapes just last week from the Detroit News that showed Donald Trump on the phone trying to influence fake electors and everything he did to meddle in that election in Michigan. But now the Michigan State Supreme Court, again, just moments ago, ruling that he will, in fact, be on the Republican primary ballot.
And let's be clear, he did try to interfere and overturn the election results, but legal scholars have been split as to whether or not that should keep him from these ballots here. And we're seeing that now play out in the states. Colorado, at least for now, has him off the ballot. Now Michigan says he can stay on. And we know the Supreme Court likely will end up with that Colorado case at some point down the road. But, you know, whether or not this holds, the politics of this are also very, very tricky. There are some Democrats who say, look, you know, Trump should be held accountable for inspiring an insurrection. That's what the amendment is about to the Constitution. Therefore, he shouldn't be able to regain office. He shouldn't be on the ballot. But other Democrats think this is just simply playing into Trump's hands. And this seems like a legal bank shot that actually makes him only politically stronger, that it fuels his arguments, as nonsensical as they are, that the deep state is trying to hold him down. And what have we seen since the Colorado case? All of these Republicans, including those who are trying to beat him in the Republican primaries, rallying to his defense. So he has only grown stronger from that. I think there are some Democrats, frankly, who probably are breathing a sigh of relief that he won't be kicked off at least this other state's ballot.
Yeah, Peter Baker, Donald Trump objectively meddled in the Michigan election in 2020. It's all on tape. We know that to be true. But what the court has said here and in other places is this is a political issue. This is not one for the courts to decide. The Colorado Supreme Court disagreed in that 4-3 vote. But as Jonathan said, Colorado alone has given Donald Trump, and even some of his opponents like Chris Christie have said, this just gives him fuel to say, look, they're trying to stop us by these other means because they can't stop you from voting for me. So do you think we'll see this when it hits the Supreme Court, and whenever that is, and likely to the Colorado ruling go all the way to the United States Supreme Court? How is this going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, this just emphasizes why the Supreme Court is likely to take it up, right? You can't have different interpretations of the federal Constitution in different states without, you know, some serious credibility issues. Why would the Constitution mean one thing in Colorado and mean another thing in Michigan? That's why people look to the Supreme Court to tell us what the Constitution means here. What they're talking about, of course, is the 14th Amendment. This was put in after the Civil War. It was intended to mean Confederates, high-level Confederates couldn't take office afterwards. It's being applied in this case because it doesn't have a specific Confederate, labeling. It applies to any insurrection. And then people want the Supreme Court to say, OK, does this suit this particular case? And there are a number of questions here. It's not just the question of whether or not Donald Trump interfered in the election. It's for whether he led an insurrection. There are some people who disagree about that, whether that word applies in this case. He hasn't been charged with insurrection, remember, by Jack Smith. He's been charged with a number of other crimes, very serious crimes that could put him in prison if he's convicted. But he did not use insurrection as one of those charges. A lot of people say that doesn't matter. He was impeached for insurrection, even though not convicted by the Senate. There are other questions the Supreme Court has to address. Is this need for Congress to implement legislation to put that amendment into effect? There's some people who argue that that's, in fact, the case, and that may be one way the Supreme Court chooses to rule on this rather than get to the question of whether or not Trump committed insurrection or not. So there's a lot of different legal questions involved. The political questions that you and Jonathan just talked about are actually probably just as significant, right? What does this tell the electorate? Does this play into his hands by saying, see, they don't want you, the voters, to have a chance to decide this election? And a lot of Democrats think that Donald Trump is better beaten at the ballot box than beaten through the court system, because then it removes that sort of legitimacy that he's seeking from a new vote electing him to the presidency.
Yeah, this is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which disqualifies anyone from federal office who is seen to have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States Constitution. The Colorado Supreme Court said he did. Now, Michigan, just moments ago, the Supreme Court there saying, no, that does not apply here, and he will be on the ballot in Michigan.